Hello, everyone. It's me, Stuart, and I'm here with my friend Mez again. And today's subject is about the fences, the four fences closing to each other immediately after alley. So, three scenarios. They're closing at the same time. You're arriving slightly before your opponent, and you're arriving slightly after your opponent.
Yes, that's
Okay,
true.
Mez?
Yes, I mean, as you said, we will talk mainly about foil. Of course, these scenarios have some familiarity on all three weapons, but there are differences. So we will focus on foil. You can make your own conclusions on the other weapons if you'd like. But the first ones, the fences start at the same time. It's very important to stress that these situations are some situations which you should practice quite a lot with your coach, and because there are options and you don't have the time to think about what happens. So the fences start at the same time. Immediately when you feel you're on the same time, you feel that because the steps would be simultaneous. If you hesitate now, you have lost your right of way, and thereby the initiative. It may not have to be bad. You can use that. But if we start with you, like saying, I will attack, you move forward, you move forward and see what happens. It can be simultaneous. If you're closing, you should attack short. By all means, you should attack short, because then you give yourself the chance to counter parry riposte. If the opponent does the same, you will have simultaneous. You will survive. You can survive that. The other one is you simply stop. You simply stop and continue another half step, encouraging your opponent to attacking you. This way, if he's accelerating, you can make now parry riposte, or if he's preparing for broken time attack, you can make stop hit. Like we talked about with the active defense, now you're in a situation where you have installed yourself into an active defense situation.
Okay, so that means the distance is incredibly important to set it all up, right? Otherwise,
Yes.
your opponent will do something other than you expect.
Yes. But now we're talking about the fences closing in immediately, one step, both, like, yep. Or even half step. Now you can play. You can hesitate, and he will be ahead of you and take another half step. That will mean encourage him into finishing, and you can make parry riposte. If he's making preparation for broken time attack, you can stop him and accelerate backwards. Or if he's accelerating, you can break the distance. Like we talked about, exactly the active defense situation. Mm-hmm. You have put yourself in this situation, and if you're aware of this scenario, you can play with that, because the opponent has very little time to think, and you will immediately feel that something happened, and he has the initiative. And if he's not aware of what he can do with it, you have good chances of making a point from a defensive point of view. The third option is that your opponent is actually trying to play this with you. Then you have to decelerate. You have to keep your moving forward, but you need to decelerate in order to have the space for moving your weapon. Like we're talking about in the attack against the active defense. Mm-hmm. Now he's moving forward, but you are one step ahead. So you should show him the change of lines, and you should accelerate, but while still moving forward. You can make that with a slide step, half step, and there you can continue attacking him.
Okay.
That's basically the options, I think, in the first scenario. As you mentioned when we talked about it earlier, in Saber, this is not. I mean, that's not so much in this situation. You should be more than happy with the simultaneous in this situation, because you don't have time for second thoughts.
It all depends on your opponent's speed, right? If yes. You're both moving at just a reasonable speed, whatever you do, they can react to you and hit you. There's nothing you could do. Yeah. If, however, if there's been a previous hit where you've been very fast, so they have to move very fast as well to meet you. Now you can make half step with show, because they're coming so fast. Their decision making is getting worse and worse and worse. So
yeah, and obviously it takes some knowledge about your opponent. I mean, sometimes you find out about these things during the match, but sometimes you know this already about your opponent, that he or she may be starting very fast. So that means you really have to, when the referee asks you if you're ready, you have to understand the meaning of that question. You have to be ready, because I mean, I've lost so many hits in my life by not being ready when the referee says allez. And meaning I know I always had some idea that my first step should be forward, but suddenly you have no space and you have no idea what you have to do. That means normally against a good fencer, you're about to be to get hit. And
to get hit.
So of course that's crucial too. And that goes back to the thing that we have talked about in most of our talks, that fencing is a high maintenance sport, because these scenarios, you have to practice them and you have to know by heart. When it happens, what happens? The opponent is hesitating, I go forward, but I cannot accelerate. Unless you feel he's moving forward fast, then you have to accelerate, because you need to keep the initiative. But you have to know this situation by heart, because there's no time to think. So you have to practice all these variations, and it takes a lot of time because it has to be on the spine. Bringing us, I think, forward to the next scenario.
So just before you go there, let's link it back to other things we've talked about. I know most people hate them, but pair exercises, right? You're doing these with your coach, yes, right? But your coach is always the same size, the same height, the same arm length, right?
Yeah,
the same type of muscles, right?
Yeah, the same rhythm, and but pair exercises are good. We're making in my club, we're making quite a lot of these scenarios, even on épée, where they're standing within the starting lines, and one fencer, it's not the same time they start, but one fencer cannot move until the other one has taken half step forward, and then we change, Simply preparing yourself for this situation where you have very little time to think about. So don't put yourself in the en garde until you made up your mind what will you do, and you're like, there's nothing in your brain except the opponent and your agenda of hitting him or her. Yes.
And also
practice. Sorry.
And also linking it back to the last one that we talked about, referees.
Yes.
As the match goes on, you get some feeling about how the referees in the middle, right?
Yeah.
So you have to adjust your game and your scenarios to that. You're not allowed to be surprised at what happens, right? No. If the score's 12-all, you're not allowed to blame the ref because you didn't know what was happening. You've been scouting it all match, preparing. Yes. You know, how much can I delay my hand to hedge my bets? How much do I have to really accelerate?
Yeah.
Right? Because if the referee only accepts really, really fast hand out, then you know you have a better chance of provoking them into parry riposte.
Yeah.
And you have a worse chance if you delay and try to make a long attack.
It's a very important point. You're right. You're absolutely right. Yes. Yeah, but this is the incredible thing, and this is why we can practice as much as we can. But in the end, we need to fence a lot of competitions, teaching ourselves to accustom to the situation, accustom to the referee, get the feeling, as you said, what is this kind of referee doing? Even knowing this referee I have, okay, I know him. He's giving attack on preparation very much. Okay, I'm fine with this. You're right. So you have to adapt this into the situation, which again goes back to fencing being a high maintenance sport. You need to practice a lot of situations you need to practice until you just know them by heart. And you need to get used to being in competition scenarios where you get a little nervous. You observe the behavior of the referee, your opponent, even yourself as the competition is moving forward, and you may perhaps become a little tired and stuff. Yeah, it's I wonder why we love this sport so much. It's taking all our time.
Because it's so exciting, because all these things make it endlessly exciting.
Yes.
Endless combinations.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. It's fantastic.
Okay, so your second scenario. So we've done arriving at the same time.
Yes. The second scenario, you are a little ahead of your opponent. Could be that he has an agenda. Could be that he just wasn't exactly ready. We have to bear in mind, no person is focused 100% all the time. So it will happen eventually, and even for yourself, that you lose half a step on the beginning. But could be he's playing with this. So having the initiative, you can do various things. You can keep the initiative, pushing the opponent. You have to observe his behavior. He will probably try and make you react, like we talk about with the active defense. So you have to apply the attacking against the active defense. So if he's pushing the distance, which he may do, he already stepped forward, because that was the precondition for this discussion. Mm-hmm. So in order to keep the initiative and the space for movement, for moving your weapon, you have to keep moving forward but decelerating, for example, with a slide step, moving your weapon away from the opponent, so he needs to follow your weapon. This way you can keep the initiative and try and provoke him with a feint until you have the situation. But you can keep the attack now if you want.
Okay, let me just think about it. So you move your weapon away, which means that if they finish on you, you still have to finish.
Yeah, but you're moving not backwards like this, but you're moving. If you have your weapons here,
yep,
you're moving your weapon away from his.
Yep.
Like feint, an active feint. You can show, like, for example, you want to make flick on the shoulder here.
Yep.
Here, and he has to protect his shoulder, of course. Yep. The purpose
and also you've decelerated, right?
Yes.
Giving yourself space to.
Exactly, because you closed in, and now he stopped. Actually, you were already half a step ahead of him, but he moved forward, like making active defense. So you have to show him. You have to show him something that you want to change the line. If he goes back, you can continue. Keep repeating the same, changing the pace, taking half step, ballester, half step back forward. If he's moving, accelerating backwards, you can do that to open the distance. This will give you time to accelerate and space to accelerate, which we do, like attacking with acceleration from outside. We rarely get the chance in modern foil fencing. Such a beautiful attack.
So hard to stop.
Yes, exactly. But you can.
That's why you never see it.
Yes, and this is why. This is when this situation you can benefit from it, because if you're moving forward, decelerating, showing something, and he feels that you're getting too close, and he's trying to reach, he has to reach very far from for your weapon. His instinct may be to move, if he's not focused, will be to move a little back. And now you can accelerate. Now we have a good situation. Yep. It feels sometimes when this happens, it rarely happens on a high level, but it does happen. And as a referee, when you see this scenario, you know there's only going to be one hit now, and that will be from the attacker, because suddenly of course he's missing, but it's only if he's making a technical mistake or the point is bouncing on yep. a breastplate or something like that, that this doesn't end with a hit for the attacking fencer. So these are like the options you have if you choose to keep the initiative. The other one you can do when you're half step ahead is giving up the initiative. The opponent, knowing that you have the initiative, will feel immediately, oh, he lost the initiative, and will try and attack you. And if he's a little unaware of the distance, because as we talked about before, the distance is close, and you stop, maybe you take even half step forward, like after you gave away the initiative, and he will try and attack you very fast, and you have beautiful situation for parry riposte or counter attack. If he's preparing for broken time attack, because you may even after that take a half step back, showing that you want to retreat, you can make stop hit against the broken time attack. Now we're back to, yeah, it's all circles, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
So this way you're like, it's counter time fencing basically. You're giving away, you're fencing against the tempo, and it can be very productive sometimes, because as we talked about, this was the precondition. In this situation, we fence by the instincts. It's on the spine. So what you decided to do is pretty much, you have these 3 scenarios in mind when the referee asks you if you're ready, and you know immediately you will know if you're same time, or if you're a half step ahead, or you're a half step behind. You will know. And this situation, you should believe in your idea, which you chose. Maybe you chose based on the knowledge of your opponent. You chose one option for each scenario you would play, and then you played. And the counter time action is a very nice one, especially against very fast opponents.
Well, especially if the referee's been splitting it very minutely, right? So you have to do everything 100% correct. It encourages your opponent to go fast.
Yeah.
And you simulate a mistake inside very, very small distance.
Exactly.
And therefore very, very small, well, that's not even thinking time, is it? It's sort of reflex time.
Yeah.
And they just go for it, and you can...
Yeah, you see, traditionally, the Italian foil fencers were really good at playing this game. Also because 9 out of 10 times they would continue forward. Having the initiative, they'd always push forward. And this, knowing that they're like experts in slowing down and changing the pace and keeping the initiative. So when they finally play this situation, they as Promonte was so amazing at the situation, like really allowing the opponent to getting so close before he parried you. And he really lured people into attacking him, really letting them believe that now he had him, and then just waiting with this parry riposte, like typically with a flick in the chest, or the high one in the shoulder. It was really, I mean, you have to be so cool to play this game. But when you succeed, and if you have the stomach for it, it's great. It's really great. Yes.
Okay. A third scenario, you're
Yes.
arriving, you're behind.
Yes, you're behind. And basically you already put yourself in a defensive situation. So basically what you do is to play the active defense situation. You could either choose to take another half step forward, as we talked about in the previous discussions, like showing, for example, that you would block the line. The opponent is coming here, you show him just like, okay, this line is not for you. Knowing, of course, he will change the line. As we talked about in the previous scenario, you would like to change the line, showing you something. And now you have the situation where you can play with him. If you're strong, you force him into changing the line. And if he's not decelerating soon enough, you will have very good situation for parry riposte. If he's even accelerating and changing the line, you can make counter-attack and blocking him. And if he's preparing for the broken time attack, you hit him and accelerate away. So this is the way. Or you can provoke, like by taking half step forward very fast. You can provoke the fast finish from him, and now you move away, making him finish, and you have the initiative. Yep. It's for me, my first coach, he really loved this scenario, and we practiced this a lot. And this overtaking situation is, for me, one of the most beautiful actions in all the. You even see it performed very beautifully in FA. We do not have the right of way, but like luring your opponent into finishing his or her attack.
Well, that's the classic 1, 2, 3, right?
Yeah.
And make a fake attack. You counter my fake. Now you're exposed.
Yeah, exactly. It's it's beautiful. I love it.
Yeah.
This is fencing. So these are basically your options. Your options here. If the opponent is decelerating, now you play the game from the active defense. You can move back. You can step out and make line. You can step out. If the opponent is decelerating, you even have the chance to step out and take over his attack without him stopping, because we know from the rules the longest attack is a step lunge. And how foil is being refereed more and more is that we actually referee after that. So if you start the step lunge from an off distance situation and he continues forward, he will make a step lunge behind you. Suddenly you actually took over. Do you get it?
Let me think about that.
So you're making the step lunge like 1, 2, 3, yes, at the same time. Mm-hmm. So now the distance is off, and he's going forward like this, boom, 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 and I'm stepping out, and doing 1, 2, 3, and he's like, now he sees I'm accelerating, and he will start making step lunge like 1, 2, 3. Now I start my step lunge before him. So if you count the legs, if you count the feet now, my step lunge will have started before his step lunge.
Okay.
So it will be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and my step lunge will start ahead of his. I can only do that. We discussed this in the active defense. I remember. Yeah, you need to be off distance. I mean, you have to accelerate away from him very wide. Problem is that most especially in men's foil, where people are big and strong, they will just accelerate a little when they see you trying to step out. They will accelerate with you just to keep the distance.
Okay, so the referee, it's if you break the distance, open the distance.
Yes.
Then this scenario is possible. But if they stay on top of you and maintain the initiative, then it's
very hard. We give this more and more, like if you make the lunge and now the opponent like bam, and now the guy pushing forward is making his lunge. We actually give more and more attack and preparation, because I mean, of course you can attack and he's making counterattack even if he starts the lunge slightly before you. But if I finish my lunge and now you start, we see this a lot against these people who are like boom, 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 boom. Now it's coming and now I finish. It's attack and preparation. It takes a lot of courage to do so, but some people are good at it. But in theory, if you step out, you can either do this. If the opponent is changing his pace, you make the line.
Okay.
And chances are now he has, because if the line is put out before the step lunge, the start of the step lunge is the line. Mm-hmm. It's the rule. I mean, we don't accept anything longer than a step lunge as an attack. Yeah, you can say step flash is perhaps longer, but still, it's like the same tempo. It's like
it's not that much longer though. But yeah, it's still one go, right? One and an attacking action.
Yeah, that's the thing. So if you this is what you play. If your first scenario with the active defense, like pushing the distance a little, and he's decelerating, and having, if he has space to moving his point into a line without you feeling that you can counter it by counter attack or parry riposte, and he has chance to move away from you. You need to step away, because now he will find a point. He will find a target for at this moment. So now you need to give yourself more time for your defense, your second line of defense, and that means you have to step out. You can reestablish the active defense by pushing in now, like showing, or like we talked about, trying to find his blade with yours from outside, like with the long arm here, just to stop him. So these are the scenarios basically. Or you can open the distance. Sometimes he stops because he's like, what the sorry, and now and now you will have chance to attack. This happens also, like sometimes he decides it's good for him to give away the initiative, and you shouldn't rush ahead now. You should do exactly what we talked about in the attacking scenario. You should push him. Yeah, I think that's your options when you are half step behind your opponent. You are in a situation where you have to defend, and you can choose the active defense from a short distance, or you can choose, as you said, like to move in and out. You're in the defense no matter what, but you need. I think it's good that you use this short distance into stressing your opponent when if you're behind, a step behind.
Yep.
Like provoking the opponent into finishing, or provoking the opponent into accelerating.
You can't just go back.
No, it definitely should be your plan B, or a plan you like have extracted from the reaction of your opponent, which also sometimes you need to do something to change the scenario and to change the game. And it could be too open, but again, as we talked about, you need to be in a situation where you believe your own instincts, and that takes a lot of training. That takes a lot of going to competitions, and it takes some observation of your opponent I mean, you saw, I keep mentioning Richard Cruz for this because he's one of the few guys who really enjoys defending and opening the distance, even from the defense. Just trusting his ability to find the right moment for either a stop hit or counter attack, even parry riposte.
Yep.
He's quite good at both, and he's very much aware of the distance and his options there. When he was in form, watching him fencing was, for me, really, really cool. Such a great athlete, such an intelligent fencer, and
yep.
And he had everything. He had nice attack, even though he's most famous for his defensive fencing. But when he finally attacks, it's awesome.
Yeah, he's good.
He's really, and being old enough to having seen him fence on the old system, he was a really strong attacker with the old system. So he's still quite good at these things. So you can play this, but basically your plan A should always be like to try and push the distance and force your opponent into reacting, like we talked about in the defensive talk we had. Like, you should try and get inside the head of your opponent by forcing him into reacting. It's the plan. And fencing is about action and reaction. It sounds like a little vulgar, but basically it's that. So if you can force the attacker into reacting on your stimuli, you actually, even though he may still feel like attacking, now you're inside his head. Basically, you have the initiative now, and that's what fencing is all about.
You don't have to be the attacker to be the one in control.
No, exactly. No. And that pretty much, yeah. We're like back to where we started, basically,
yep.
on our first talk, and it's, yeah, we are circling around the same
well, I
subjects of fencing, which are, for me, the dominant subjects of modern foil fencing, really. Yeah, especially,
it's also nice to have like reusable skills, right?
Yes.
Skills you learn in your active defense, you can now apply to closing fast.
Yeah. Especially because in all these, there's no contradiction in all these scenarios. You can actually blend them together. You can train these things, and doing that properly, you will have a plan for most scenarios happening on the piste, which is what a fencer should have, and what both fencer and coaches should strive for, to like having a fencer, even if the coach is at another strip with another fencer, you have a fencer who knows what he or she will have to do, given different scenarios, and they can manage themselves, and sometimes maybe even better than with a coach. Sometimes a coach can even confuse the fencer.
Sometimes.
Sometimes
all you need is one of your teammates on the side, give you some encouragement so your head doesn't go down. And then, I mean, it's when you're on the strip, it's too late for heavy technical advice, right? If you've done the work in the saddle, you've done it. If you haven't done it, you haven't done it.
Yeah. If you're listening now, I will mention Richard Cruz again. If you listen to Chemek, his coach, sometimes he's giving advice, but most of the time it's encouragement what he's giving, because they both know what he will do. Sometimes he says, okay, the opponent has changed a little, but he rarely says much about what he has to do. It's more like, yes, you're right, Richard Cruz, you're doing well, and then all this stuff. We know this very well, but I think it's a good example of how even a teammate could or clubmate could act as a coach. It's about encouragement, believing that your choices are the right choices. And now we're back into the start, like when the referee asks you if you're ready, you have a plan for various scenarios and you believe in it. And this is where your teammate can help you believe in yourself, like cheering for you and rooting for you. Maybe even taking the odd discussion with the referee about some scenario, just to give you time to brace yourself for the next.
But yeah, if you're going to do that, though, every member of the club needs to know what their part is, right?
Yeah.
If your clubmate goes to the referee, you have to know you're not supposed, as the fencer, you're not supposed to be engaging the ref. Your teammate is giving you time to have a quick word with yourself.
But you see that the big nations, the traditional fencing nations, they always have a very clear game plan for this. At some point, even with I've experienced this as a referee so many times, even at clear actions, like there can only be one decision made in this action. Some guy will come and, but he started too early. Then even if they know that this is too stupid to argue, they will come and ask you if your opponent's laces are tied too loose, or his or her hair is coming out, or the coach is coaching too much, or something like that. Just to give the fencer this moment to recompose and refocus. And it's part of the game, absolutely. And you can do that yourself as a fencer as well. As I said at the beginning, you need to don't put yourself in on guard before you feel, okay, now I'm ready. Give yourself the time to check your feet position. You know how to stand on guard, of course. Just to give yourself the time to focus on the next action. Because if we have this situation, and more you see this, both fences are coming a little forward after allez. You need to know what will happen next. So again, be ready.
All right. Well, be ready. We'll leave it there, Mez. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
We'll see you on the next one.
Yes.